I think it may ask you right now if you are okay being recorded. The good news is largely the recording will be the person who's talking. So it shouldn't be too bad. Let's start with a word of prayer. Will you join me in a spirit of prayer? God, it's good to gather together this night using Zoom and to be able to connect in this way as we are about the work of sharing the good news of Jesus with our communities and being God's community together and making that known even in this new time we find ourselves in. Bless our conversations and the sharing tonight, that your will would be worked among us and that our best would be given for your kingdom. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
Well, the session this evening is on, I think I called it, Is Your Virtual Front Door Open? And I hadn't initially seen that term, but about midway through the pandemic, I started to see articles talking about opening the virtual front door. And then as it began to be the place where more people were able to begin to, in some places, return to their church buildings to gather physically in person, there began to be a lot of chatter around the notion of how our church is going to continue, or how our church is going to be changed by needing to offer some kind of virtual experience, opportunity, a way of connecting with the church, even when the immediacy of not being able to gather in person at all, physically together, went away. And so we were doing some looking at that. We've had several churches in the district who had stepped up at various points wanting to do some work at streaming services or trying some different technology kinds of pieces out. And we had helped a couple of congregations through the New Ministry Fund, New Ministry Opportunities part of the Ministry Partnership Funds, to try to do, figure out how to do streaming. And those systems were $8,000 to $12,000 systems with, not radio controlled, joystick controlled cameras mounted in different places, or various and sundry kinds of things. And the district put a small pittance in towards those, and the congregations covered a good chunk of the cost of doing that kind of thing. The reality was, though, as I was reading more, as we were thinking about and praying about how our church is going to continue to connect. I mean, they talked about shut-ins who can't come anymore, or people who are traveling and are away wanting to connect in with their church and still do that. But also folks who are looking for churches today, needing that ability, wanting that ability to get a sense of what's happening in a church before they walk in the door, thus visiting you through your virtual front door before they might ever come on your church property or open the door to your church building. And so out of that, we began to explore at the district board level, how might we support smaller congregations, churches that weren't going to put $10,000 into a system or didn't have $10,000 to put into a system. Were there ways of doing that more affordably? And we had some folks who were already playing with that kind of stuff. We worked with a consultant out of the Circle of Peace Church who does this kind of thing, teaches elementary school kids how to live stream things. And we figured if elementary school kids could live stream stuff, certainly we could help churches figure out how to live stream things as well. And so with all of that, we have actually allocated funds of up to $2,000 per congregation to work with churches to help put in a basic streaming kind of system. Tonight, we're going to hear from a couple of different churches. that have systems in place in what they're doing. And there are two different approaches that you'll hear about tonight. There may be others of you who have some things you want to share as well, but we're going to do a little sharing and then we'll lean into some conversation with that. If there's others who've got things they want to share, but we'll be able to talk about all those kind of things. We're going to start with the folks from the Glendale congregation. Robert Aguirre is the pastor there, and Scott Valles has become the director and producer of Sunday worship at the congregation. So guys, I'll turn it over to you and let you get started.
Great. So I'll kind of give an introduction of how we went. Can everybody hear me good? Yeah? Okay, good. So I'll give an introduction of kind of how we went from right before COVID until we started using the program we use called Studio Switcher. And then I'll let Scott Valles come in and share the more technical side of it, and then ask, you all can ask questions, and we can go from there. We so on and so forth. So I think just like most of you, I was surprised by the pandemic. Before we knew it, we weren't allowed to go to church, and it was a problem, and we were wondering what to do. So I remember calling my pianist to the church, and I filmed her. I said, sing a couple of songs, and I recorded her. I didn't really, things were changing constantly. And so I recorded a couple of songs on my iPad and recorded a message on my computer, and I just kind of dabbled in video editing. I used iMovie that you can get on a basic Apple product, and just started sending out these little devotionals that were helpful to the congregation. And we also did Zoom. And, it's when you're editing, pre-recorded material, it's convenient because you're editing out your mistakes. You're adding lyrics, you're doing things and kind of controlling that. And then when things opened up last year in California, we were allowed to go back to church. We started using Facebook Live, and just going to the church and using that program. And it was convenient because we already had a Facebook account. So some people were going to church, some people were watching at Facebook Live. And then we were told we can't sing anymore. And then we were shut down again. Just like you all remember that time. I think it was around Father's Day, I think. And so we started using Facebook Live, and we liked it. We liked that we could film in a sanctuary. So we had about a half dozen crew on a Sunday morning. Some people singing, I was preaching, some people, doing announcements and so on and so forth. And I guess so there's benefits to that, but there were some cons that we didn't like. We didn't like that you could only use on Facebook, you could only use one camera. Whether you're recording on a phone or an iPad, you just have one shot. And so you're recording someone here, you're walking over here and it's shaking, and or you get, sometimes people put it up and you get one shot for 45 minutes, one medium shot. That's all you can use. And that's gets kind of boring because it's just one shot. And what Scott and I really wanted to do was to have a way in which you could have, cue to the pianist for a couple of seconds, and then cue to the vocalist, and then cue to someone in the congregation, and then cue over here. And so things are happening, and it'd be a little more easy to keep someone's attention that way. And that was kind of what we wanted to do. And so Facebook didn't allow us to do that. So we did some research.
Hey,
and
Robert,
we saw a couple of, yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you for a quick second because our translator has arrived, and Noemi, I'm going to assign you to be the translator. And but before I do that, if you want to let Lucio and Florecita know that they can click on the little globe and choose Spanish, and they'll be able to hear you.
Okay, we'll do that.
So you go ahead and say that now before we send you out.
Okay. So Florecita y José, si pueden, para tener esta traducción en español, esta Insight Session, pueden presionar Language Interpretación para que puedan recibir la traducción en español. Para que ellos puedan escuchar, tener su propia traducción en español, y nosotros podemos tener nuestro propio cuarto para que ustedes nomás lo reciban, para que yo no interrumpa eso. Si pueden, cuando aparece en adelante, o en una parte de los 3 líneas que entran donde dice Language Interpretation, ustedes van a poner español. Okay? All right.
All right, you'll have to accept here in just a moment.
Okay.
I'm going to make sure that Noemi is there
I-
on the
I
Spanish
did it.
channel.
I'm
Noemi?
there.
All right.
Okay, Florecita. ¿Sí me escucha?
Yes.
Oh,
Lucio, can you hear Noemi? All right. While they're finding that, Robert, I'm going to go ahead and invite you to continue. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries at all. Like I was saying, we were using Facebook Live. It did have some limitations. We were wanting to have multiple camera angles, things of that nature. And we came across an app called Studio Switcher. And I'll share another minute or so and then turn over to Scott. But the thing we liked about this is that it allows your phones to be cameras. So you're not buying a bunch of equipment. Most people have a phone. So you would set up a phone and you would use an iPad as kind of a monitor. And so you set up a phone by the organist, or you set up a phone by the vocalist, and you would cue to the different phones, and you'll be able to switch. That's why it's called switch. You'll be able to switch your angles. And it made for a better viewing experience for those watching at home. Yeah, we certainly seem to like it. And especially, to me, it's just much more entertaining than just one camera, one shot. And it seems to be an enjoyable experience for those watching at home. So I'll turn it over to Scott, and he can share the more technical side for a few minutes, and then maybe open up some questions. And before I turn over, we would be happy to share with you. You're welcome to take a look at one of our services to get a better idea. And if you're ever in the area, we could certainly show you what we do and give you a little bit of training on the site. Okay. And Scott, I'd like you to share a few minutes about Switcher and what you do on a Sunday morning.
Greetings, my fellow brethren. My name is Scott Rias. I attend the Glendale Church of the Brethren in California. It all came to me at about visiting during the pandemic when we were all quarantined. I stayed with my sister in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I decided, I realized we were shut down, but I wanted to go take pictures of our church there at that Galapagos Mountains area, right? So I went over there to see that they said that they would stream services right on Facebook. And I thought, wow, that would work pretty well. Unfortunately, what I had to do was they told me that I would first have to call in on that Monday after, let them know that I was interested. And then I would have to give them my Facebook information for it to be approved. And then maybe the following week, if I got voted, then I would be able to watch the streaming. This is when I realized I don't think that would kind of work for our church or for my quick visit at the time. So I took that time to figure out what if we really had to do that kind of stuff. And like most churches, we're limited because some of these places you stream can only do one camera at a time, or it's going to take a lot of money to buy the type of equipment or stuff you're going to need. So trying to figure out a budget and doing this kind of stuff was a tough thing to do. However, after looking around and seeing the types of things that were offered out there, I stumbled upon a system or a video system called Switcher Studios. Some of you have probably run into it or seen it somewhat before. And all it really is it's a platform that allows us to be able to be and stream anything on any platform such as Facebook, YouTube, a lot of the different types of streaming services live at that moment. However, what's unique about it is the studio allows you to incorporate your own resources. So we use 2 iPads and 3 cell phones to be our cameras through the system. And though you don't really need that many, we have found that to get what we want to be seen for our church on our Sundays, we found it very easy to do because it was mostly those that work with the church that would volunteer their phone for me to just use it as a camera. So it's easy to get all these different camera angles and set it up. But the studio makes it very fluent for you to, and for particularly anybody who has no experience in production at all, you can get a pretty good grasp, and it's finger touching. It is very simple to use. The only thing that was a little hard to understand is that you do need to have somewhat of a microphone system that will speak to that studio. And the studio can be run from a phone or an iPad. For some reason, the studio cannot be worked off of a regular desktop. It's made to be a mobile studio, but it
Sí, ya
offers great
estoy
features.
escuchando bien. Gracias.
De nada, de nada. Listo, mijo.
Sí, las estoy escuchando bien.
Oh, está bien. And
Sí
then
se escucha mejor.
Sí, gracias. Ay, disculpen.
the studio thing was it came down to a budget. So we tried to figure out what would it cost our church to be able to do such a thing. So the studio, I will tell you, is going to be about a $300 yearly subscription to use. But what I will tell you is that everything that you're going to be able to use, you're going to have what television studios have at their fingertips. Everything from slides to pictures to even stuff that you filmed can be incorporated. So an example is we do tests. So I can actually record Robert giving an entire sermon in his office, save it, and then it gets displayed on the studio at the same time that we do something live. And then you can actually switch frames, jump to somebody singing in the choir, back to pastor giving a message, perhaps pictures that you've done for the things or whatever your subject matter is going to be talked about at church. You'll find that it brings it all together pretty well. The microphones ended up being budgeted out pretty close to about 200. And then every small, I think our budget ended up being that it was about a $700 starting venture to be able to use the studio and everything else. But your cameras and lighting and stuff, you're really not going to need to purchase. If you're using the phone, that's I can only say for Apple, but if you're using an Apple 6 or up, I mean, the cameras are phenomenal. They get great camera angles, and they do enough for you that's really all you need. And next to your iPad or your phone, you'll have connected a little thing that's going to go into where the lightning charger is at, that's going to control the incoming audio of the mics that you'll use for studio. So the only thing that has been a little difficult for us and get used to is when you're at services, you have your in-house microphones and everybody here is great. However, you have to provide that same atmosphere for studio mics, because if you think you're just going to film it, unless the mic is at a speaker, you're really not going to hear much. So we use special studio mics just for that, and we get away with it with just 2 of them, and they do a phenomenal job. Any of you have any questions about something like that?
So I want to say thanks to both of you. I'm going to see if I can do a quick screen share here to show you. That's the setup at the back that they're using. You can see my cursor. This is a handheld unit. He can walk around with that, filming from wherever. This is the control studio right here. And, oh, wrong way. And if you look in this picture, they've got a camera here, a camera here, and a camera here that they're using in addition to that are set up streaming into and feeding into that each time. So give you a little bit of sense of how some of that looks. So thank you, Scott. Thank you, Robert. And keep your questions. We'll come to them in just a bit. I want to turn to Laura Best and Joseph Guthrie from the Papago Buttes congregation. Their pastor, John Chubb, is here as well in support of them tonight. And they're going to show you a little different approach for how to do this, how one could do this.
So we, started, I can't remember actually, I think last Easter was our last in-person service. And we were off We didn't know what we were gonna do for about 2 weeks when we shut down. And then we went to Zoom online. And we chose Zoom because people that were 100 could call in on their phone, or we could call them and three-way call them in and then drop the call. And our pastor could sit in his office and give the sermon, and everybody else sat on their sofas or office chairs at home. We did that until April or till Easter this year. And then the Sunday after Easter, we switched to a hybrid in-person online. The setup we chose here, I'll screen share if that's okay, to kind of walk through what we did. We've always used a PowerPoint presentation for song lyrics, announcements, scriptures, etc. But now it's completely replaced our bulletin and hymnal. We still have bulletins. We don't have we don't use bulletins anymore. We still have hymnals out. People don't really use them. But when we this year in April went to in-person and online, we decided to use Zoom and continue using Zoom because we were familiar with it and it still provided what we needed. It allows our audience to see the slideshow that we're presenting up front on our PowerPoint screen, which shows again everything we just talked about. And then also we can share a camera view of our speaker. We had tried 2 cameras at the beginning with a wide angle, and then we'd also done a narrow where we either switch from the speaker, like the worship leader or pastor. The only other time we really change it is down to maybe like the children's story time. Anyway, and then the only other thing we do different is we record our sermon audio during just the sermon time, and we do that so that we can stream that on Spotify. This is a little more technical than maybe you want, but it kind of lets you see what we're doing. We have a PowerPoint up in front of us. That's the PPT. And that connects that little kind of up and down black rectangle. It's our computer. We have a desktop computer. And that's connected to our soundboard, which we have sound coming from all of our regular mic system. We had our soundboard already. All of our mics connect into our soundboard and then into the computer. And then any sound that people on Zoom, sometimes we have people share from Zoom, that sound comes from Zoom into there and then goes out through our system so everybody can hear it in the sanctuary. If I didn't know better that they were on Zoom, I think they're behind me just talking in the mic. It comes through great. We have 2 monitors back at our sound booth. One shows PowerPoint. One we use to see our Zoom screen, and then we also use it. OBS is the free online software that we use to do the audio recording for our sermon to transfer to Spotify. Anyway, the real thing that we use to make this kind of happen that we bought new, and Brian Yoder had recommended this and we were using this, is a Blackmagic A10 Mini. That's this thing that has those 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons down in the lower left. That allows us to connect our cameras, our screen, our computer monitors, and then we connect it to the computer. That allows the computer, well, it allows our Zoom to accept the video feed from that camera. Otherwise, you'd have to have a different connection. It also allows you to suppress, okay, we want to be able to see the Zoom people to see the video shot, we press 1 button. If you had a second camera, which we did for a little while, you could press button number 2, say. If you want them to see what's the PowerPoint, like we're doing a song and you need to see the words, you can do that. It also allows for picture in picture. So like when our pastor switches and shows a picture, we can flip it over so that in the big part of the screen, you see the PowerPoint slide with this picture of whatever he's showing. And then up in the corner, you see him. So that's what we do there. The next thing, this is kind of what you see when you're back in our sound booth. You see right there, we have on the left a tripod. We haven't mounted it yet. We've, I would say, gotten away with just a simple setup there. And then we put the camcorder up there. And again, it's just a Canon camcorder that we're able to plug in directly to the wall. And sorry, I didn't mean to do that. You don't have to have two monitors. It makes it a little easier, but you don't have to. So that's our setup back in the back, what it looks like. And then you can see up front, we have our Zoom above, and everybody in the congregation is looking up at the Zoom unless at PowerPoint stuff, unless somebody's talking from at home, then we flip them up, which we do have when people share joys and concerns, or we've had services where people share, then they'll be up there. For example, here we, during our two different ones, you can see on the left one, two people are sharing joys and concerns, they're raising their hand, they have something to share, and we're looking and they're able to talk. There on the right, we had somebody share for quite a while. They were an important part. We paid off our loan, and they were speaking about, because they were the building committee chairperson, everything that went. So they were a big part of that service, and they were up on the screen there. And that made it really easy to do with our Zoom. Again, you've probably used Zoom before or know of it. It's only about $112 a year for us. I'll let Joseph talk now.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of go over the pieces that we have. I won't get too into the technical specs of it, but I'll just kind of go over the price and why we picked it. So like for this computer, it cost us about $400 and we got it refurbished, but we chose it so that way there's two outputs, so that way we can use two different monitors, like Laura was saying. It also has like its own special mic jack and headphone jack, so that way we can have a separate input and output audio. So it makes it a lot easier for whenever we plug it into the soundboard. And then on the next slide, so this is the Blackmagic A10 Mini that Laura was talking about. So it cost us $295 about. And so the main reason we got this is it lets us switch between camera angles and different HDMI inputs, but a really important piece of it is that it tricks any program that we're using, and we're using Zoom, into thinking that it's a webcam. So this way you can plug in any type of computer or HDMI input without using a different capture card, which is what other churches use. And this allows us to use more than one at the same time, versus if you use a capture card, you'd only be able to use a single input. And then on the next slide, this is the camera we chose. It cost us around $190, maybe a little less. We chose this because we can keep it plugged into the wall the entire time, so we never have to charge it. It also has a clean HDMI output, which means when you're using it, you don't see any of the settings or menu displays. It just shows just the video itself, nothing overlaying it. And then it also had really good zoom, so we could zoom all the way up to the podium. And then the next slide, we're just using our old soundboard. So you can use basically any soundboard you want to input into Zoom. So this was a pretty good option. I would say it's not the best, but it works. So anything you have in this realm will work fine. On the next slide, so we use OBS, which is open source, so it's free to record our audio, but you can also use it to record any input video that you have, or any video that you maybe share on your screens. That way, if you want to record a video and upload something later, it's really easy to use. And it can also be used simultaneously with Zoom, so you can pass video and audio through it, while also streaming that same video and audio to another application on the same computer. And on this last slide, we use the file that was generated from OBS in the past slide, and we just we wrote this quick program in Python that makes it into an MP3 and makes a podcast in about 10 seconds, and then we upload it to Spotify. So, so that's what our Spotify section looks like.
Right.
And I'll say we chose this and we haven't expanded greatly, because right now we are able to do it pretty simply. Like my 6th grader can run the Zoom portion and change it from whether we're looking at the camera view or the Zoom or the PowerPoint or picture in picture. So. And yeah, I think overall it cost us just over $1,000, probably a little bit more if we counted some things like donated tripods or stuff like that. But in general, it was the ATEM, some cables, a camera, a newer computer. Like we already had monitors, we already had our soundboard.
Do you guys, so do you publish on your website or in your social media? Do you put that Zoom link out there that anybody could pick it up and come in, or do they have to contact someone? How are you kind of
We
working with
do
that?
now, yes. We had not been during most of the pandemic having our Zoom link public. Sometime this summer, we switched over to making that public. We were worried about it for a while, about Zoom bombing and all these things, about stories of people not being in and sharing appropriate stuff, but we don't allow sharing. Like share screen, we try to remind the people that are back there in Zoom that they need to watch who's coming in and realize, how do you kick somebody out really quick? You have participants up, you can kick them out of a meeting or mute them, and just be aware. So yes, we do have ours on our website. It goes out in an email, and yeah, you can click a link from our website now. And we also ran into the fact that people thought they had their link and then couldn't find it occasionally. And so we're like, yeah, it'd be helpful to have it on your website for another reason there if you can't find your email.
Yeah. I think one of the nice reasons and thank you, Joseph and Laura, for your sharing. I think one of the nice thing about both of these two different sharings, and others of you may be doing other things, the going to Facebook allows people who are following on Facebook can type in comments and that kind of thing in Facebook, but it's more of a one-directional piece that's going out. The Zoom opportunity has created a way in which you can still remain interactive if someone's in the building, out of the building. The Sunday that, I think it was the Sunday that we installed John as the new pastor at Papago, the opening call to worship was led by 3 people, 2 of whom were in the room and 1 who was in Zoom projected on the screen. So you don't have to be in the room to be a part of that. I think that week as well, they set an iPad up in the narthex, and people as they were coming in could visit with others who were already, people coming physically to church could see who was in the Zoom space and have conversations and that kind of stuff, and do a little check-in and visiting kind of thing in that space. So there's some different pieces that are going on in the mix there. The Circle of Peace, when they went to doing outside worship, started, and that's Brian Yoder from there, put a simple streaming together, which essentially is what Papago had kind of stumbled onto. And that's kind of the base system that we're working on. But if your congregation's looking to, and with that, it was a straight streaming system. One camera, same camera that they're using at Papago, the ATEM in the middle, simple soundboard to get the sound into it. Nothing particularly fancy, but it gives a person the opportunity to see that. They now have a much more advanced system inside there now that they've moved back inside and are doing that kind of thing. So what the district has done is putting together to essentially, we've priced out at just between $1,600 and $2,000, depending on what you need added to your current equipment in your congregation. We can purchase for you and help you get established and set up. If you're wanting to do switcher, I'm going to send you to the good folks at Glendale to talk you through how to make that work. If you're wanting to use Zoom, we're going to try and connect you in with Laura and Joseph for the technical support kind of questions. And the straight up streaming, Jay Irizarry, who's on this call from the Empire Church, has been kind of our guinea pig of really trying to get a straight using OBS system up and streaming. And and he drags me over because Empire is only 10 miles down the road from where I live. So we've got it all but the sound piece perfectly figured out. But we're going to write that up, so we'll have a good set of instructions as well then But there's 3 different ways that we can go, different things. Scott and then Joseph, as far as internet speed in your sanctuary, what kind of upload speed are you guys finding you need to have in order to make this work? Scott?
I'm sorry. I thought I was going to give Joseph a chance to answer first. My thought on that one is you really do need to have at least, you know how cable companies offer your 3 tiers. You're going to need at least medium or better. The only reason being is because you are streaming a lot of video. That needs to flow pretty good. Unfortunately, here's the bad thing for us is we could use higher speed. We're not able to because our church was built to where cable companies want to charge us 15 grand to get lines properly installed there. So we cheat off of these very, very old copper SBC lines that allow us to work with AT&T to give it. But I do recommend that even though we don't really have the highest, we're still running pretty good. But I think you're going to need at least that medium bracket speed, if not the high tier, because you are doing a lot of video. Unless, of course, the way Joseph's is set up, you don't really need too much because you're really using that whole camera too. You just need to be able to telecast it. Whereas with Switcher, yeah, you're going to need to because you're streaming other cameras and a lot of video.
Yeah, that's basically what I was going to say. Because we really only have one computer that brings in downloads of other people's Zoom that they're streaming to our Zoom room. And we're only uploading 1 stream of video and 1 stream of audio. So we get away with somewhere around 30 megabits per second. So we wouldn't be considered fast, but we haven't had any problems with it.
I would say as far as any cost to a church that does it on the Switcher side of things, then yeah, your bill is probably going to be between $50 and $80 based on where you're located. But I'm speaking on California costs, so it may be less.
Okay. Well, last question for both of these groups, and actually, how many people does it really take? I think one of the things I hear from smaller congregations is, who's going to run this? So what does it take people-wise to make this happen? Who is doing it in your church to make it happen?
Joseph.
Not many. I've done it by myself once. It's pretty difficult, but it can be done. I'd say easily 3 people would make it a little too much, but 2 is like the sweet spot we found. So I kind of deal with the sound, and Laura's son deals with the camera and the switching, and we find it works pretty well.
For me, I'm with Joseph. It's pretty much me. I'm pretty much production, and though it would be great, I like him. I think that sweet spot is 3. I personally, I can get everything done with 2. I just need somebody who can be once in a while a remote camera, but that's just for creative reasons. You don't have to be moving a camera. I'm just saying that if I could have somebody that could move into certain positions for me on certain things, that would be great. But with Switcher Studio, I'm able to run the whole thing all by myself. Yeah. Everything from switching to coming up. It just makes me, I can run the whole thing. You can do it with 1, but you're all going to wish, like Joseph, about, 1 to 3 people would be great. Great.
Well, I'm going to open it up in just a moment for anyone to ask a question that they might have of these folks, or if you want to share something about how your congregation is doing something. Folks who are in Spanish, if you have a question, kind of wave, we'll let you say it in Spanish, and then I'll pop over to the channel and have Noemi translate it so we can speak it back into the group. And then we'll get answers to that. The last thing that I was going to ask is, the theory behind this is it gives us an opportunity to have a virtual front door open. What are you knowing? What are you seeing about who's visiting, who's checking things out? I don't know, Papago, do you record those and post them? And maybe some of you, the other ones, I know Circle of Peace uses a YouTube channel after their live streams. But who's coming to see these? Who's checking you out? What are you learning?
We actually did, when we had our Zoom link only shared internally, had somebody, because it just said on our website, email in or contact us for the Zoom link. And we did have a couple people email in and ask for our Zoom link. And we've had a person come now for a year practically that started coming online and had never been in our church in person until this year. But Joseph or somebody else could answer the rest. I don't know, honestly, the rest.
Russ, I could respond to that a little bit. We are virtual and we are face-to-face every Sunday.
And what was at Modesto?
Modesto, yes. Every Sunday, we have between 40 and 50 people face-to-face. We do wear masks. We sing with masks on, which is pretty awful, but we do it. And we are told and shown that we have about 170 virtual. We have people watching our programs from around California, around the United States, and actually some people from out of country.
That's fantastic. This is great.
Yeah, Felton, we have the same experience. We are getting between, at Circle of Peace, sorry, in Peoria, Arizona, we get between 2 to 6 people who are new every week. And almost without exception, they have all been part of our congregation online before they ever step through the door. It is really the way people are having a comfort zone with a church before they walk through. So the funny thing is that they feel very connected to us by the time they walk in, as if they know us, we just don't yet know them. Oh, there's Pastor Jeremy, because they know him by his face on the screen. And we have seen people jump in giving more quickly financially, because again, they've got some ownership in the place by the time they come in the door for the first time. So we've really come to understand that we have 3 churches. We have a first service, we have a second service, and we have an online service, and it really is a church unto itself. So we too, Felton, have a family in England who watches the service every week. So we're hoping at some point we can have free lodging when we go visit.
And when we invested in a better system because to take it to future building, so we kind of bought up for future expansion. We're like, okay, who are we serving, and what's this look like? It was the online giving amount. It shocked us when we looked at the numbers. We needed to provide a quality service to our online congregants,
because that's all they. So meant for many of that's all they are. It's an online church unto itself. So yeah,
and it directly was impacting our budget, our giving. We were surprised. It's not like $10 a Sunday.
Right.
Put a couple zeros on that.
All right, Scott, do you have a question? Don't ask too much technical. I applaud a lot.
Oh, no, dear. No, dear. What I wanted to tell you is it sounds so great. I mean, what Switcher has done for me, I would love to be able. Our problem is the absolute opposite. So for us, we don't have the generational gaps of newer people would enjoy and use this. Those that have, there's a very few. For us, we've discovered that it's another way to get a lot of our senior community to step up in technology, because they really need to. And of course, I do it very, you just can't teach, an old dog to trick sometimes, and you got to respect their wishes, but sometimes it's because they can or don't. But we really realize how much of a gap that we don't reach anybody on our sector because of that. So has that improved getting your tidings and donations in a better structure? That has it worked out better that way?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question.
Yeah, is the being able to get donations through via seeing it from website, has it worked out really well?
Yes, 90% of our giving now happens only online. That was
That's
another piece.
amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing.
90% comes online.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, your virtual presence isn't just the service, it's virtual, your
Everything.
church,
Right.
how to participate in church life virtually.
Yeah.
Small groups, like you have to look at it more than Sunday morning. I mean, you can look at it more than Sunday morning in terms of, again, it's a witness, it's an outreach program that we were kind of like, okay, how do we provide for our people? It ended up being an outreach program.
Yeah.
In surprising ways. Some planful and some just like, wow, this just happened.
I wanna be able to use it as an excuse sort of to get some of my elders to throw in the towel, and I'll teach them, get you into some technology, be good for you.
So I
Thank
want to, thanks, Scott, good question. I open it up for other questions that folks may have. I think what I would say in talking with the leadership groups of all of these places, and even talking with Circle and Modesto, who were ones that the district helped put a little bit more towards than this basic system. Well, we spent about the same amount, but they put a lot more into their system. I think that there's a couple of weeks, a couple of Sundays, maybe even as long as 2 months of Sundays that may feel a little bumpy trying to figure it out and to make it work. But once it does, you've got the system basically in place and can kind of run with it. I'm thinking we've got 2 folks from Pomona Fellowship here tonight, and they're in a situation where they're meeting 3 times a month. The first, I'll blow this, but let's say it's 2nd, 4th, and 5th Sundays they meet in Zoom. 1st and 3rd, they're leasing space that they meet in person at. But this kind of system, if you wanted to continue to use Zoom like they do at Papago, is flexible enough that you could fairly easily bring it in, put it together, hook it up, run it for the week you're there, and include those folks even on the weeks when you're in person. And it's a system that when you move into a more permanent home, the system would go in there and the equipment would still work for you. So lots of flexibility. Part of it is figuring out, what do you need? What other questions do folks who we haven't heard from have?
Russ, I would just share with you that listening to the people that have spoken, it's a real blessing to have somebody in your congregation that knows what they're talking about. and Modesto has developed a system, and it has been a much longer process than you mentioned. We've had sound problems, and we've had all kinds of problems and training problems because there just didn't happen to be any of us that were really knowledgeable. So it's really very valuable if you have somebody like these people that have spoken just now that know the language and know the equipment and can plug it in for you. And that helps an awful lot. And it's great to have. So you're blessed.
I would agree. I know nothing. I just ask other people. I ask other churches. I've asked other districts. I've talked to people in our district at different churches when we were having problems, and people in our own church, my husband, everybody knows way more than me, but thank goodness they're all happy to share. So yeah, I agree.
The other piece that is out there, and I'll publicize this to pastors and invite them to pass it along. The Atlantic Northeast District, on the far other side of the United States from us, they're in the eastern part of Pennsylvania. But they, for about the last 9 months, have been doing, I think it's the first Thursday of every month. I think it hits about 3 o'clock Pacific, 3 or 4 o'clock. But hosting, they've got a technology person that they've hired and he convenes a group for conversation. And they're open to folks from other districts coming in and being a part of those conversations, asking questions. I know Laura's been there before. I've been there. And so it's, you know, it may be worth popping in sometime if you're interested or you want to see what some other folks are doing. Let's see here. I'm going to do a quick translation here. Hang on one second. Somebody else has got a question. They can go ahead and throw it out there right now while we're getting this one ready.
Yeah, I have a question. What was the name of the studio system that Glendale is using?
Switcher, Studio Switcher.
Studio Switcher.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to piece something for you there.
I'm greatly impressed with the systems that both of these places have put in for the amount of money they've spent. We put in a system in our meeting house at Hillcrest, 10, 15 years ago, and studio quality cameras and switchers cost 10 times what these people have spent. So I applaud you for being able to do it economically.
And you'll get a chance, Floresita, we'll bring your question in just a minute. You'll get a chance to see Studio Switcher in action. Friday night's worship service will be streaming live from the Glendale Church, and you can watch it on Facebook. We also will be carrying it through a Zoom channel so that we can have translation into Spanish. And Scott, you and I need to touch base after this tonight because you put something in the chat that piqued my curiosity. But you'll get a chance to see what that kind of final product or finished product looks like a little bit Friday night in the worship service, kind of thing. Floresita's question was: is it possible it can these folks who know so much give advice to them for their churches, and how much does it cost from a money standpoint? I'll let them speak, but I think in both of these situations, the cost of doing it was between $1,100 and $1,800 in equipment. In Studio Switcher, you got to pay $300 a year for the software. Zoom is $150 a year for the software. But on top of those costs, probably another $1,000 to $1,500 in costs. And yeah, they are available to be helpful. At least they've told me they'll be available to be helpful, and they've been good that way so far. And the district is providing for smaller for congregations that, you know, if you want to work at it within that range, we will cover the cost of helping you get your virtual front door open.
Awesome. Awesome.
And the contact for that is reach out to Joe Vecchio or myself, and we'll get started on that process with you. Probably more so with me than Joe. Does that answer your question, Floresita? Other questions or thoughts?
I have a question. This is Eric.
Eric.
I am curious, how portable are any of these systems that you're using? And I ask because we don't have at Live Oak a permanent sanctuary. We set our sanctuary up on Saturday mornings and take it down on Sunday afternoon after worship has ended. And so, you know, I mean, aside from having, you know, the people to run it, if this is something we were, you know, wanted to do, which I think some of us do, we need something that is portable and easily movable from week to week. How are all of the systems that you're using, are they pretty much permanently in place, or can they easily be moved?
As far as switchers concerned, I only need my iPads, about a pound. The microphones I use audibly, including what it takes to carry, that's another 3 pounds. And then I would say any tripod weight, maybe 2. That'd be it.
Yeah, so the Glendale situation that Scott just described, they don't leave it in place. I mean, they take it out every week and bring it, reset it up every week.
By
Because
myself, it takes me about 35 minutes to set that up for me to do a service when I get there on Sundays, and maybe 15 to take it down.
We're kind of not related, just real quick about the switcher, the studio switcher. So if you're using, I don't know, if you have 3 cell phones and a tablet, do each of those devices, do they need to be like through a carrier like Verizon or AT&T, or
It's
could
gonna,
you just get some unlocked phones?
it's gonna use its own URL system where it's gonna communicate with the phone. So say you come in with it and you got your iPad and you're set up to run the studio, you need cameras, obviously. So it's even going to use the camera that's already on you but your main studio is probably going to stay in place. You don't move it. And then I can say, hey, Bob, can we use your phone to be a camera for Switcher? And the way they'll do it is like anything else, he'll have to download the app on his phone. This doesn't cost anything, but then there's a little thing that says cooperate with this. And then the Switcher talks with that and it gets 3 or 4 phones. It says that it does 5. I've gotten away with 6, but I really only need 4.
And I think it uses, they largely are on the wireless network in the church.
Correct.
Most
So
of the time.
obviously the way it will have to work though, so fair warning, is you're going, whatever internet service you're using there in-house, the phones all their phones have to be on the same network. And then they'll talk, no problem, they'll run. So, that's the neat thing is, our pastor lets us use his phone as one camera. One of our speakers lets us. So we use that. They all cooperate to say, hey, here's your camera I need. And then I can put them in place and then voila, and make the changes pretty easy. And then here's your phone back. Thank you. It's that simple.
The system at Papago, because they've used a desktop, is not quite as portable. But we're setting churches up with laptops to do that with, which are a little bit more expensive than a desktop was. Jay could talk the system they've got up in the balcony at Empire, but it could easily be packed up and put away.
Yeah, that's correct. We were using an older laptop that we had and it did not work quite as well. That being said, like my home laptop worked just fine. Joseph's worked fine. But yeah, for cost reasons, we said, we're probably not going to need to use it in our situation. And so a desktop was cheaper. But yes, ours is, I could be wrong, fairly portable as long as you're, as in putting it down, taking it up. It's not a ton of work, but we do leave it up. But you could use it somewhere in like our other building, as long as you're able to connect well to the internet. And then we have a soundboard over there too, but.
I noticed you guys use OBS over there, which is the program that I found and I'm actually trying to use, but I'm actually having some issues with that right now, currently as we speak. So who's the person to ask about that?
Joseph, are you the OBS expert?
I'm no expert, but probably me.
Oh, that would be you. Okay, so I'll get at you soon, I guess, and then because like I said, I'm having some issues. If that's okay with you.
Yeah. One of the issues we're having at Empire is the last pull of the sound from the soundboard into the OBS kind of a thing, because they're actually just trying to stream them to YouTube. So folks would be able to go to their YouTube channel and see things. So
see, right now, I'm just pulling the sound directly from the camera, and whatever the camera's picking up, that's what we're getting. But right now, we're close, but it's a little bit frustrating, and especially since the OBS right now, I'm having a problem with the OBS, and so if you could help me out with that, that'd be awesome.
Have you gotten the sound to register in any other application like Zoom?
You know what? I haven't got, well, outside of, no, not was, well, let's see here.
We haven't tried Zoom.
No, I don't think we tried the Zoom part. We haven't had the Zoom. I know we tried to get the video going on in the Zoom, and that seems to work, but the sound part, not quite yet. That's like the last part that I'm having issues with, is just trying to drag that sound over. So like I said, it's I think that's the last part of it, I guess. So I think it's certain settings that I need to do.
Para conectar los dos puntos, ahí puede haber fallas, entonces.
Quite downright or not. So I'll talk about that. I don't want to hold everybody up on that. So
Yeah, Joseph, you've been on my list to email to say Jay and I need to consult with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Other questions? Well, it's, there are a host of different things that different churches are doing and trying in this time. And for me, I think the thing is to think about and to pray about what your congregation can do, who you might reach, who you might connect with in different ways of trying to put something together. One of the articles that I read that really touched me at one point during the pandemic was one that a church had actually was streaming, but they had ended up buying several tablets that they then gave to members of the congregation who didn't have technology. And they didn't go out and buy $500 iPads, but they were able to pick up $129 tablets. And for people who didn't have the technology at home, we're able to connect them and bring them in. I can imagine a church down the line having, loaner pieces that they could give to someone who's shut in for a short period of time or as needed, so that person can stay connected, whether it's watching the Facebook feed, which you don't have to have a Facebook account to watch the stream, or plugging into a YouTube or those kinds of things, working to do that. Scott, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, what I'll do, just because out of what we've discussed here, is I will make kind of a thing I can send to you, whether it be, presentation via on Windows deal, or what I use is Keynote, or I'll send you something that they can look at that'll show you what we've purchased, what its costs, how it was used, and give you a little detail so that because it does matter how big your church or how big your congregation will decide, what costs can be, but it'll give you a better idea how it runs. It's pretty efficient.
Yeah. And really for getting going in this, there shouldn't be a financial barrier, because the district is really working to step into that. I know Florecita is eager to do that, but in the new church project in Waterford, we've got to get Wi-Fi going in the sanctuary and some things, but and some people. But we'll get you there, Florecita.
Have a question?
Yeah, Linda.
Yeah, thank you. So did I understand that the church's grant, and I'm simply asking this out of ignorance because I'm not on like a committee in the San Diego church that would be in the know on this. So if we have, say, senior citizens or others who don't own the technology, then the grant could help with equipment to either give or loan to them?
I think we'd want to make sure you are first with funds set up to do the streaming well, so that you're getting the message out.
Okay.
But if someone had a vision to say, we want to connect some people that we have that don't have the ability to do it, I'd certainly be glad to entertain how we could partner in doing something like that.
Okay. Because we have we have a Zoom, I don't know if you would consider it streaming. We do a Zoom book club from 9 to 10 every Sunday morning. And one of the people who used to be in person in that book group does not have technology. And so the services are then available on YouTube afterwards, but he doesn't have access to watching it afterwards on YouTube either. And so, okay, sounds like maybe chatting offline some other time. Thank you.
Glad to have those
So
conversations.
just a question. So does that person, because if they're doing a book club, I know it's still nice to see people so you don't interrupt like me just now. But if they can call in, they can do that. Or you can call them.
That is
patch them into Zoom, because we had to do that for a few people. They would call me and they're like, I'm trying to get in, I'm calling Zoom, but there's so many numbers, I can't dial them correctly. And I could call them and I could call Zoom and three-way call them in also, because there was no way she was ever going to learn how to use a computer.
Great idea. Wow, great idea. How simple.
Well, and you know what? Forehead slapping moment for me, because yes, we actually do have a couple of people who are on their phone just calling in, not Zooming in. So yeah, I hadn't even thought of possibly making that connection. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you all for your time this evening. And if you want to follow up with one of these folks, you can get in touch with me and I can get you in touch with them, or call their congregation and say, hey, I need to talk to that person who did this. So our presenters tonight were from the Papago Buttes congregation, and they're the ones that are doing a Zoom-based thing, and then from the Glendale congregation, which is using Studio Switcher as a way of producing their services. And you'll get a, like I said, you'll get a chance to see that in action on Friday night for the worship service. So thank you all very, very much for being here. Noemi, our thanks to you for providing translation and bringing that along. And yeah, with that, you're free to go. Scott, I would like you to stick around for a second, though, to ask you a couple questions about something you put in the chat. So
no.
Thanks, Laura and Joseph, for your sharing very much tonight. Thanks all for being here and a part of things. So
God bless. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So Scott.
Yes, sir.
You said that Switcher will go to Zoom.
Okay, so this is new to me. They announced this last month because our subscription is up, so it kicks in, but they mentioned there's a new feature where I can incorporate a Zoom and studio, in other words, film us there and Zoom it all at the same time. So Pastor and I, Robert and I already have a schedule to actually play at the church to do that, to see how we would do it, because it would be a new time and first time for me to do it. But I'd like to see if I could practice it a couple of times, because if I could get it to work, boom. But then if not, then we can stick to your format you want to use from there.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I think that the channel will do nicely for us.
Wait till I do some great stuff with that thing. Which is a great system. And if it's, and they just reported that I can do that, and it's great. They'll be able to, I mean, most of them will be able to just go to our website and it'll be there they just touch the square and they'll watch us live with the chat thing at the bottom, like you say, and everything that it comes back to. It's pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, so anyways.
I'll report back to you on Wednesday how those experiments work. Robert and I are already, because we're supposed to have the time to in other words, I need some guinea pigs, somebody to go on their Facebook or set up your Zoom. I want to see how it's incorporated, or do I incorporate the Zoom from me into the studio? That's what I want to find out.
Very good.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Yes, sir. No problem. Thanks, boss. It was fun, actually.
All right. So Florecita, are you back in the main audio? Can you hear me, Florecita? Lucio, can you hear me? You're muted, hermano. Oh, I thought Florecita might stay for. Dice Pensio Florecita 30 transducio para conversación para mí a ti. Hermano, mute. Sí. Bueno.
Sí. ¿Me escucha?
Tú, un momento. ¿Has usado mucho Zoom o no?
No, es la primera vez.
Hoy, ay.
Es la primera vez que estoy aprendiendo esto Zoom.
Ay. El botón con el globo, terraqueo será tu amigo esta semana.
Ajá.
Para traducción.
Ya. Es un reto para mí aprender. Este seminario es muy importante para mí.
Sí. Well, y al comenzar nuestra relación, estoy abierto a ver cómo podemos ayudarlo con esta tecnología.
Ajá.
¿Sí?
Sí.
So, we'll talk, dice. So,
Sí, se necesita aprender la nueva tecnología, ponerse al día.
sí, sí. ¿Te imaginas haciendo tu estudio bíblico desde casa y teniendo todos tus muchos grupos juntos una vez, no más veces?
Es very importante eso también.
So, está bien. It was good to see you this evening.
Ok, igualmente. Estoy muy agradecido y bien bendecido, ¿verdad?
Gracias.
Y gracias porque es un hombre de Dios que nos escucha y que nos ayuda, ¿verdad?
Para
la obra de Cristo salga adelante.
Amén. Amén.
Me da mucho gusto aprender de estas conferencias porque para mí es nuevo, pero es un reto para aprender.
Well, I'm using estoy usando Google para ver lo que necesito decir.
Okay.
Sea fácil consigo mismo esta semana mientras experimenta el Zoom. So, bendiciones, buenas noches.
Bendiciones, que Dios me lo bendiga y que siga adelante, ¿verdad? En el nombre de Jesús. Amén, para que todas las peticiones de su corazón sean puestas delante de Dios.
Adiós.
Adiós. Que Dios.
Bye-bye. Good night.
See you tomorrow.
Tomorrow or soon, sí.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.